Good day everyone, we are the Group 1 and for today's lesson, we will going to discuss the theories of money and banking. This module covers the different theories about the role and functions of money, the mechanics of how money is created and circulated in an economy, and the various theories about how central banks can influence the economy through monetary policy. For the content of our report, we will discuss the definition of money, theories of money creation and circulation, the demand for money, the role of banks in the money creation process, and the relationship between money and the economy. So here are the three key functions of money. Number one is serve as medium of exchange. So money acts as an intermediary in transaction and eliminates the need for barter. So money is like a tool used to buy and sell goods and services. So like for example, when we go to a certain store, instead of trading items like lanzones for a shoes, you can simply give cash. So dito pa lang is makikita na natin kung paano mas napapadali ng pera yung pakikipagtransaksyon ng mga tao. So, isa sa mga nawala or na-limit noong na-imbento ang pera is yung tinatawag nating trading or barter. So, yung barter po, ito po yung pakikipagpalitan ng goods and services. Like, for example, gusto ko ng sapatos, nahanap ako ng taong may sapatos na willing makipagpalit sa dala kong 5 kilong bigas. And, so, yun po yung tinatawag na barter. And one of the reason why is barter eliminated ay dahil there are circumstances nga na unfair yung mga bagay na nakukuha mo sa barter. Katulad nga ng example kanina, ang sapatos, kunwari, is worth of 25 kilos of rice. Pero dahil nangangailangan ka na or gutom na yung pamilya mo, wala kang choice kundi ang tanggapin na lang yung 5 kilos of price which is mas mababa sa original na halaga ng sapatos. So, next naman is the unit of account. So, money provides a common measure of value, simplifies price comparison across goods and services, and facilitates economic decision making. So, para naman dito, yung money daw is nagsisilbi siyang parang measuring tools. So, yung pera, binibigyan niya ng specific price yung isang goods and services. So, dahil nga may specific na price na yung mga goods and services, is madali na lang para sa atin na magdesisyon kung ano yung mga dapat nating bilhin. Especially for those na kailangan budgetin yung pera na hawak nila. So, next is store of value. So, money allows individual to save earnings for future purchases and enables the accumulation of wealth over time. So, sinasabi nga dito na inaalaw ng pera na makapag-ipon yung mga tao para sa kanilang future purchases because yung value ng pera ay hindi nagbabago. Unlike dati, hindi ka pwedeng basta-basta na lang na mag-ipon ng mga bagay-bagay, especially ng mga pagkain dahil pwedeng mabawasan yung value nila habang tumatagal or worse is wala na siyang value at all. So, for example, nag-ipon ako ng kilo-kilong bigas for let's say 2 years. So, para yon sa aking future trading purposes. So, dahil nga bigas, pagkain, it can be rotten. So, bababa yung value niya kapag pag gagamitin mo na siya. So, parang hindi na siya enough doon para sa goods na gusto mong makuha. Unlike sa pera, kapag nag-store ka ng 500 pesos sa alkansya at tumagal yon ng 5 years, yung value ng 500 pesos mo after 5 years is still 500 pesos. So, yung money, ito yung isa sa mga functions ng money. It allows you to keep your wealth, meaning you don't have to spend all your money right away. You can save it for future needs. Tumagal man siya ng ilang taon sa bangko or alkansya, mananatili pa rin yung value niya.
theory. The folk theory asserts that money comes from tangible commodities like gold or silver. This theory holds that money worth is directly related to the tangible goods it stands for. According to this theory, currency is formed when a bank or government backs it with certain items. According to the folk theory, banks act more like intermediaries than money creators, accepting deposits from consumers and lending them out. This theory is frequently challenged for being out of date and for not adequately capturing the complexity of the credit-based current financial system. Ayon sa POC theory, ang mga bangko ay kumikilos ng higit na mga tagapamagitan kaysa sa mga tagalikha ng pera, tumatanggap ng mga deposito mula sa mga mamimili at nagpapahiram sa kanila. Ang teoryang ito ay madalas na hinahamon dahil sa pagiging luma na at dahil sa hindi sapat na pagkuha ng pagiging komplikado ng kasalukuyang sistemang pinansyal na nakatabay sa credit.
Neoclassical orthodoxy. Where more sophisticated understandings of today's money creation process emerge, such as in discussion of business or finance, they tend to be based on what is taught within standard. The main principle here is the money multiplier model of credit creation. According to this model, banks first try to attract savers' deposits as per the folk story. The central bank then determines exactly what proportion of total customers' deposit must be retained by commercial banks, and what proportion of deposit can be lent back out by the bank. This proportional figure is known as reserve requirements and is typically around 10%. If the reserve requirements is low, this means that banks can lend out of the majority of their customers' deposits. Conversely, if the reserve requirement is high, bank can lend out a small proportion of savers. This neoclassical rendering offers a more nuanced explanation of money creation than the folk story, especially in its involvement of central banks in the process. However, the neoclassical story still replicates core components and omissions of the folk story. Most concernedly, it appears dramatically at odds with the recent developments in understanding of credit creation, such as those confirmed by the Bank of England and other central banks. So, a key component of this neoclassical story of money creation is the fact that there must first be customer deposits before new loans can be created derived from those deposits.
Good day, Mom. My name is Charmaine Santiago, and this is Theories of Money Creation and Circulation. Credit theory. The credit theory of money was first proposed by economist Joseph Schumpeter. The theory emphasizes the crucial role of banks in creating and allocating the money supply. The theory distinguishes between two types of credit creation: the productive credit creation and unproductive credit creation. Productive credit creation is a type of credit creation supports economic growth without causing inflation. Even when the economy is at full employment, it is often associated with technological advancement. Unproductive credit creation is a type of credit creation leads to inflation, either in consumer prices or asset prices. It is often associated with speculation or unsustainable borrowing. So as an example, there are a group of friends who want to start a business. They need money to buy supplies and equipment, but they don't have enough. So the credit theory says that banks are like the money lenders for this group of friends. If the bank lends them money to buy equipment that will help them make and sell their products, that's productive credit. It's like giving them the tools they need to build a successful business. This can help the economy grow without causing prices to go up too fast. And if the bank lends them money to buy a fancy car or go on a vacation, that's unproductive credit. It's like giving them something that doesn't help them build their business. This can lead to inflation, which means prices go up and things become more expensive for everyone. So the credit theory is about how banks can help or hurt the economy by deciding who they lend money to and what they lend it for. That's all. Thank you.
Theories of money creation and circulation. Chatterlism, or the state theory of money, posits that the value and legitimacy of money are derived from government authority. According to this theory, money is essentially a creation of the state, which mandates that taxes be paid in its issued currency. Therefore, money derives its value not from physical backing like gold, but from the trust and acceptance granted by the government. George Friedrich Knapp, a German economist, created the Chatterlisian theory of money. According to Chatterlism, money worth is determined by the government rather than its composition or utility. Money is particularly important because the government requires people to use it to fulfill tasks and other obligations. In other words, the value of money stems from the fact that people must use it to satisfy their legal obligations, rather than from any intrinsic characteristic of money itself. In this view, the state plays a crucial role in regulating and sustaining the money supply through its monetary policies, legal frameworks, and the enforcement of tax obligations. It highlights the relationship between governments and currency, suggesting that the fate of money comes from its status as legal tender rather than its material composition.
Demand for money refers to the desired holding of financial assets as cash or easily accessible deposits, and it is influenced by various factors. Transaction demand. The need for money to conduct everyday transactions, typically higher in active economies. Explanation for demand of money. Imagine you get an allowance every week and you don't spend all of it at once because you know you'll need some money for later like snacks, movies, or even for a toy you're saving up for. The money you keep with you instead of spending is your demand for money. And here is my example. So, you have a 1,000 pesos and you could spend it all on a new video game, but you only decided to only spend 500 pesos and keep the other 500 in your wallet. And you're holding into the 500 pesos because you know that you need it for other things like going out with friends or buying something else. And the 500 pesos you keep represents your demand for money. In a larger sense, businesses and people keep a certain amount of money on hand for everyday needs, future plans, or emergencies. Precautionary demands. Funds set aside to cover unexpected expenses increasing during economic uncertainty. Speculative demand. Money held for potential future investments fluctuating with market perceptions and expected changes in asset prices. Rational demand for money is the amount of money people and businesses need to carry out their day-to-day transactions like buying groceries, paying bills, and purchasing goods and services. Example, imagine you earn a 500 pesos a week and you know you need about 200 pesos for groceries, 100 for transportation, and 50 for small daily expenses like coffee or lunch. The 350 you keep aside to cover these regular expenses is your transactional demand for money. In the example, you hold on to that 350 pesos because you know you'll need it for specific purchases during the week. And that's the money you need for transactions, hence the term transactional demand. Explanation. It's the money you keep just in case something unexpected happens, like if your car breaks down or if you have an unplanned medical expenses. And example, imagine you have a 1,000 and you decide to keep 200 pesos in your savings account, not for any planned purchase, but just in case something unexpected happens, like if your phone stops working and you need to repair it. This 200 is your precautionary demand for money. In this case, you're holding onto that 200 pesos because you want to be prepared for any surprise expenses. It's not for regular spending, but rather for just in case situation. Speculative demand. It's the money you keep because you think you might find a better way to use it in the future, like investing when the prices are lower. An example, imagine you have a 500 pesos and you could invest it in stocks now, but you think the stock market might go down soon. So you decided to keep your 500 in cash, waiting for the prices to drop so you can buy stocks at a cheaper price later. And this is 500 is your speculative demand for money. And in this example, you're holding into the money not for regular expenses or emergencies, but because you're waiting for a good deal or investment or opportunity.
Hello and welcome. Today we are diving into the critical role that banks play in our economy, how they influence the money supply and the regulations that keep our financial system stable. Let's break it down. Banks are intermediaries that connect people who want to save their money with those who need to borrow it. They do this by accepting deposits from customers, offering checking accounts, and issuing loans. These loans are what allow businesses to grow, homes to be bought, and new ventures to be started. Now, here's something fascinating. Money is actually created within the banking system when banks issue loans. This might sound surprising, but every time a bank lends money, it adds to the overall money supply. However, the reverse is also true. When loans are repaid, the money supply shrinks. The money supply can also be influenced by the reserves held in the banking system. An increase in reserves allows banks to lend more, which increases the money supply. Conversely, a decrease in reserves reduces the amount banks can lend, shrinking the money supply. The extent of this change is determined by something called the deposit multiplier. The deposit multiplier is calculated as the reciprocal of the required reserve ratio, the percentage of deposits that banks are required to keep in reserve. For example, if the required reserve ratio is 10%, the deposit multiplier would be 10. That means that the increase in reserves by $1 can theoretically increase the money supply by up to $10. Of course, with banks playing such a vital role in our economy, it's essential that they are safe and stable. That's why bank deposits are insured, ensuring the customer's money is protected. Additionally, banks are heavily regulated to prevent risky practices and maintain confidence in the financial system. In a summary, banks are much more than just a place to store your money. They are a vital part of the economy, creating money through loans and controlling the money supply through their reserves. And with robust regulations and deposit insurance in place, they remain a cornerstone of financial stability. Thanks for watching, and stay informed and stay financially stable.
Good day, I am Nashas Alexa Kairin, and I was assigned to talk about relationship between money and economy. Currency fluctuation can have wide range impact on the economy. A natural outcome of floating exchange rate can affect commerce, economic growth, capital flows, inflation, interest rates, and beyond. A currency's exchange rate is typically determined by the strength or weakness of the underlying economy. The money supply significantly impacts the overall economy. First, let's talk about the monetary policy. Central banks regulate the money supply to achieve goals like price stability and economic growth through tools such as interest rate adjustments, open marketing, operation, and reserve requirements. A country's interest rate affects the value of its currency, so those with a fixed exchange rate will have less scope for independent money policy than ones with a flexible exchange rate. A country's monetary policy is closely linked to its exchange rate regime. A country's interest rate affects the value of its currency, so those with a fixed exchange rate will have less scope for an independent monetary policy than ones with a flexible exchange rate. Second, let's talk about inflation and economic growth. Rapid increase in the money supply can lead to inflation, while controlled money supply can stabilize prices and promote sustainable economic growth. In general, when inflation is high, it makes a currency weaker, suppressing investment and thus negatively impact the exchange rate. And when the inflation is low, a currency is stronger, improving its exchange rate. And lastly, connecting money supply to GDP. While nominal GDP tends to rise with increased money supply, The real GDP, inflation adjusted, does not always correlate directly, emphasizing complex interaction between monetary policy and economic performance. In short, when the GDP growth rate shows rising economic productivity, the value of money in circulation increases. This is because each unit of currency can subsequently be exchanged for more valuable goods and services. Economic growth tends to have a natural deflationary effect even if the supply of money does not shrink. To sum it up, if there were no money, we would be reduced to a barter economy. Every item someone wanted to purchase would have to be exchanged for something the person could provide. For example, a person who specialized in fixing cars and needed to trade for food would have to find a farmer with a broken car. That's all. Thank you.